This is what Democrats vote for. Rep. Cori Bush, in response to criticism over her spending tens of thousands of dollars on private security while advocating for defunding the police, tells regular working Americans to, quote, suck it up. She says, we have to defund the police. And, I'm important and saving lives, so I need my private security. That's right. In cities across the country, we've seen many Democrats, many politicians advocate for or actually defund their police departments. I think I covered this months and months ago. It was around 260 or so departments that had defunded their police to a certain degree. In New York, they did it. In Minneapolis, they did it. I believe in Seattle, they did it as well, in many places. But we then learned that these Democrats in many of these jurisdictions hire expensive private security for themselves. When criticized in the Washington Post, of all places, Cori Bush says, suck it up, because I'm important. I'm doing the important work. I'm saving lives. So I get special privileged access to security. We all warned this would happen, remember? A year ago, you said it. I said it. That what's going to happen is they are effectively going to privatize the police. They are going to give themselves their own special police who will probably act outside of the law, and the rest of you will be left wanting. Now, of course, you may have noticed me saying things like abolish the police. It's not for the same reason that many of these leftists say. They come out and they say, oh, the police are all racist. My thing is more so, look at what's happening with the anarcho-tyranny, with Black Lives Matter rioters smashing up windows, taking away people's right to defend themselves, while extremists are actually killing people. How many people died in the George Floyd riots? I think directly, it's like 24. And in the periphery, it's over 30 or 35. And there are many regular people. We see these stories. They aren't allowed to defend themselves. I'm not all about that. And it's the police who are doing it. So I say, call their bluff. Of course, the anarchists, be it ANCAPs, ANCOMs, or libertarians, are, calling me based for saying it. It's not for the same reason necessarily. It's certainly not for the same reason as these individuals. I actually think a functional and reformed police department is a fantastic thing, and we should respect those willing to do a very difficult job. There are many good cops out there that I totally understand. But so long as I see more and more stories about Black Lives Matter extremists and anarchists getting away with committing these crimes, I'm going to keep saying it. There's a meme going around among libertarians where it shows a guy in a MAGA hat being arrested, and he said, it's a guy he's saying back the blue, and then in the next one he's being arrested, and he says to the cop, "Thank you for your service," or something like that, or "Thank you for being a police officer." We see what's going on with the cops going to people's homes and arresting them for defending themselves. We've already seen the story. I think it was in Baltimore where they were serving a red flag warrant. So this is a guy who has no idea what's going on in his house. Cops just show up one day and say, "We're coming to take your guns." And he said, "No, you're not." And they killed him. He was shot and killed in a scuffle. We have seen other stories like this. So this is not a condemnation of police officers or of those who are willing to take these dangerous jobs, and often for very little gratitude. This is a problem with the system as a whole. And I will tell you this: so long as we are capable, responsible, intelligent individuals, then perhaps it's time to restore personal responsibility and community responsibility. So I'll tell you where I may overlap with these individuals. They say community policing. I say, yeah, call it a militia. Right? How about this? You keep and bear arms. You come to your neighbors and say, we will be responsible for the safety and security of our own neighborhood. How's that for you? Because I'll tell you this, what's happening in the cities is not going to go over well. The police defended the Black Lives Matter paintings in the streets. If the police are not doing their jobs, or they are just servicing corrupt politicians who steal money, then we've got a very serious problem. Now, to be fair, sheriff's departments, elected officials, actually rather different. And to be completely honest, I think these big cities have problems, and we definitely need to be more real, serious reform, because we can't tolerate this. You take a look at what's going on with the Metro Police Department in D.C. and the Capitol Police, what's happening with these people from January 6th who are being locked up in solitary confinement. Now, I got no problem with these people being arrested. In fact, if you were rioting at the Capitol, I think you should be. But the treatment they're receiving is absurd. And more importantly, the propagandistic, psychotic behavior that we are seeing from these cops in this hearing, they're crying. No, I'm not going to support these guys. Sorry. I get it's a tough job. I do. Especially for the cops who were there in DC. I mean, that was crazy. Those people should not have been storming the Capitol in any sense. And then you see Black Lives Matter. And what do we get? These cops are like, well, that's different. No one's overthrowing CVS. And it's like, hold on a minute. Am I supposed to sympathize with wealthy elite politicians or the small working class? Sorry, I'm not going to defend these guys. Don't care. As far as I'm concerned, abolish the police. I know a lot of conservatives have said Tim's okay with criminals going for. I never said abolish prisons. Oh, wait, no, actually I did. Well, no, reform prisons. I think we definitely need to have some kind of carceral system. I did say I agree with AOC in a certain sense. She wants to abolish prisons and police. And I'm like, well, maybe the way we're doing it now, for sure. I think there's better ways to handle this. But I will say, take responsibility for yourself. That's the best thing I can do because I've seen too much of what's going on. People need to be personally responsible. But I think it's fair to point out the sheer hypocrisy of these Democratic politicians. From timcast.com, suck it up. Cori Bush defends hiring private security guards while demanding America defund police. The so-called squad member Cori Bush defended spending thousands of dollars on private security this week while demanding Americans defund the police, saying average folks just have to suck it up. She said, quote, I'm going to make sure that I have security because I know I have had attempts on my life and I have too much work to do. There are too many people that need help right now for me to allow that, said Bush. So if I end up spending $200,000, if I spend $10 more on it, you know what? I get to be here to do the work. So suck it up. Defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police and put that money into social safety nets. You know what, man? I'm not a fan of these people at all, but if you still live in a city at this point, I don't know what to tell you, man. New York just mandated vaccines. And I've heard from so many people, they're like, I don't like this stuff. I don't agree with it. And it's like, okay, you can stay in and challenge this stuff. You can stay and you can vote. Let me know how that works out. I mean that in all sincerity. Keep voting, keep trying, and that's respectable. Or you can leave. I think people need to leave these cities. I think when you have New York, which is overwhelmingly Democrat, being there and saying no to this, it is okay. It's a good thing. But at a certain point, the ship is sinking, man. And so for me, I got to New York because there were bombs being planted. There were assassinations of police officers. And then I saw that things weren't working. You know, they send the police to the areas they say are high crime. And then you end up with the Democrats saying that they're sending it to these black neighborhoods because they're racist. And I'm like, yo, the people running the city are Democrats. You voted for them. It is insanity. It's absolute insanity. The only real response I have to all of this is personal responsibility with respect to those who are firefighters and paramedics and police officers and service members. In the end, personal responsibility. There is some collective action, I think, that is good. I actually think the overall police are a really, really good thing because it allows disputes to be resolved by, in a sense, neutral arbiters, right? If there's one militia group and then someone, runs to their neighborhood and then another militia group is chasing, saying that guy stole from us, like, how do you resolve that? Well, police work together. So they're basically like, y'all can shut up. I don't know or care. It's going to go to a judge. And it's actually a pretty good thing. A lot of people on the left don't seem to understand that our court system is a good thing, okay? Even when you get arrested, I'll tell you this. For the people who complain, like, I was unjustly arrested, and I'm like, yes, that's bad. I'm not a fan of cash bail because I don't like the idea of financial punishment or requirement for somebody who's accused of committing a crime. I will say, however, you get to go to court. It's not easy. It's not perfect, but you get to go to court. I have been in these situations. I have been falsely arrested, and I got to go to court. And I'm lucky because I've been to countries where that is not true. It needs to be better. Honestly, it needs to be better. And we can do a better job. What Cori Bush is saying, though, just shows the ego, the insane ego of these people. I'm doing the work, so I get to be here. No. I mean, look, politicians need security, that I get. But you need to have a different system in place. You can't just say we're taking away private security, or the public security from regular working people. There are certainly problems with police departments, sure. Well, this is a response to this from the Washington Post. Of all places, this one's really amazing. Democrats want police protection for themselves, not for the rest of us. The Washington Post says Rep. Cori Bush is an outspoken advocate for defunding the police, who has called America racist and declared the modern day policing as another system of bondage, through which slavery quite literally lives on today. So it was ironic to say the least when news broke that Bush paid nearly $70,000 over the past 3 months for private police protection. In truth, Bush isn't paying for personal security. Her campaign donors are paying for her personal security. Her police protection accounted for more than a third of her campaign expenditures during the second quarter. So the very individuals and organizations that were so excited by her calls to defund the police that they contributed to her campaign are actually funding police to protect Cori Bush. The problem is her constituents don't have rich supporters willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars to protect them. They have the police. And the city of St. Louis, which Bush represents in Congress, recently cut $4 million from its police budget and eliminated 98 officer positions. Where is the money going? About $1.5 million will go for affordable housing. Another $1 million will go to assist the homeless population. And another $1 million will be diverted to crime victim support services, including funeral expenses for crime victims. Maybe if St. Louis had 100 more cops in the streets, there would be fewer funerals. Last year, the city had 262 homicides, the most per 100,000 since the 1970s. Yet despite the explosion of murders in her city, Bush praised the decision to take almost 100 police officers off the streets of St. Louis as historic. You're allowed to have guns in St. Louis. The McCloskeys got pardoned. They walked out onto their lawn. People were entering private property and they brandished firearms and they got pardoned. I'm not interested in playing this game. I don't quite understand. Let me be honest with you guys. I see Black Lives Matter protest and get away with it. I see them firebomb buildings and get away with it. I see some get arrested. I see some get charged. Most of them get away with it. In D.C., I was there. I watched them set fires and smash windows, and D.C. paid them millions of dollars in a settlement. I see that over and over and over again. And I say to myself, what are the police doing to stop this? People come to me and say, Tim, don't blame the cops. It's the courts. It's the DAs. And I'm like, I agree. But if the police can't do it, if they won't do it, and if they would still arrest someone for bearing arms to defend themselves, why should I support that? If they would still defend the corrupt politicians painting Black Lives Matter in the streets, why should I support that? Now, I may disagree with Cori Bush. I may think that she is a narcissistic, arrogant individual. But you know what? I'm not going to defend police departments that aren't protecting working class people when the city is paying the extremists off in places like D.C. and they can riot outside of a courthouse and the police don't do it. And it's amazing to me. People say, but they, when they're arresting, conservatives or people who oppose Black Lives Matter, when they're arresting people who are just bearing arms, they're being forced to do it. No, they aren't. There's the door, man. You can walk right out. How could we sit here and say a cop should do their job to arrest a law-abiding American for breaking one law that I find unconstitutional, and that is keeping and bearing arms? And I'm not talking about like NFA items even. I'm talking about the story of the guy in Baltimore. The cops show up to his house and he didn't know they were coming for a red flag warrant. It was the red flag thing, right? Like I guess it was his sister or sister-in-law said he was a danger to himself and others. So the cops got a court order, went to his house and said, we're taking your guns. The dude had no due process. You can't go to a non-adversarial court, get a writ and just take it. No, due process is he gets a chance to go to the judge and say, Your Honor, I'm fine. This is a private dispute. Instead, red flag law served, and they came and they took his guns away. Or I should say, I'm sorry, they tried, and he refused, and he was shot and killed. Why should I support stuff like that? I understand not every single cop does this. I understand that the basis for the left's defund the police is wildly disproportional to reality. But at the same time, if the DAs are cutting these people loose, then at the very least, here's what I'll say. I like the idea of sheriffs. Why? They're elected and they are beholden to constituents. That's great. Because if that sheriff does something wrong, people say, I'm not going to vote for him. That's good. Big city police departments specifically, they, I think, should just go. You know why? It's the big city Democrats are the ones that are calling for it. Far be it from me to tell them they can't do it. Now, to be fair, I had a great conversation with Charlie Kirk and Will Chamberlain, and they pointed out, Tim, you're so libertarian, and they said, but we are not. Charlie and Will explained that they were conservatives, and they think the law must be enforced regardless of what the local communities want. It's an interesting position. Charlie made a great argument. He said, should the National Guard have been deployed, it may have been the Army, to enforce desegregation? And I was like, that I think was a good thing. I think segregation is wrong. There's an interesting conundrum in what you're willing to enforce and what you're not willing to enforce. And for that, I said, that's a great point. I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. I can only say, at the very least, I want to promote people being responsible more for themselves. And I want to promote not taking actions against someone for the sake of some end goal, some utopian vision. I'll tell you what you'll get with defunding the police from Democrats. You will get strict gun laws, and you will get private police that will do nothing for you. The Democrats' view of defunding the police and abolishing the police is anarcho-tyranny. That may arise, too, with a general abolition of police. That's why I don't like the idea. I like the idea that police are beholden to the public to a certain degree, more so sheriff's departments. We've seen sheriffs do bad things. There was a sheriff who arrested a salon owner, I think it was. No, I don't. She was opening her business during COVID, and so they issued a warrant for her arrest. She was like 30 miles away. The sheriffs came and arrested her for this. That's wrong. I think that's wrong. Why should I defend those sheriffs? Now, I get that. I think most sheriffs actually do a fairly good job, and my encounters with them have been pretty good. City police like New York, never going to defend them. I once was in a cab, right? Let me tell you a story. I was in a cab, leaving a bar, a little drunk, wasn't responsible. I didn't drive anyway, but I was like, call a cab. And so my apartment, it was straight over the bridge, straight down Broadway. There you go, all done. So I get in a cab. And he drives across the bridge, and I fall asleep on the bridge. I wake up only a couple blocks later with him zigzagging between blocks, trying to run up the meter because he thought I wasn't paying attention. I asked him what he was doing. He says, don't worry. And I say, no, I live straight. Why are you turning? And he had done it several times already. I said, no, stop the car. And he refused. He tried hitting the gas. So I popped the door open and jumped out while the car was moving because this guy's trying to kidnap me. He comes out of his car and starts chasing after me. I run inside. He's outside screaming. I say, can you call the cops? The cops came and mugged me. No joke. The cops showed up and said, we don't care. We don't care what happened. Give us your money or else. And I said, what? I called you. This guy's threatening me. They said, we don't care. They took my wallet, took the cash out, handed it back to me and said, you want to ride home? And I said, no, that's New York. I'm not playing games. I don't care for that. They can't handle the riots. Then I'm not going to defend that. I'm not going to defend them. Now, no, okay, I get it. Personal experience. But you know what's going to happen. In New York, 27 cops defended that Black Lives Matter mural, which was not legally done. I'm not going to defend cops if they're not going to defend working people. So when all this was going down, when all the riots were happening, I was like, defunding the police is stupid. We've got lunatics running through the streets. We need cops to stop this stuff. And they did. A lot of cops got injured. Some cops have lost their lives, and I have tremendous respect for these individuals. But now we're beyond this. And what are we seeing? Now, after all is said and done, more and more stories of regular people being arrested and being abused, and these Capitol Police going on TV and the MPD and crying and saying, basically, screw you. I'm not going to play that game. I won't do it. So you know what? I think at least in the rural areas, sheriffs are fine. Big cities. How many of you are conservative and live in a big city? To be completely honest. Because I don't think it's that many. I think you certainly are out there, but most conservatives in big cities are still fairly liberal individuals. That's what I find interesting. I don't know who the people are who are conservative saying we must defend the police. And I'm like, but do you live in an area with a large police department? For real. I live in the middle of nowhere. We have a sheriff. We have a county sheriff. That's about it. No, that's seriously it. And I think they're fantastic, especially where I'm at. They do a great job. Really nice. In fact, I'll tell you this too. Surprisingly, the state troopers in Maryland, they've been great. They've been really great. Local police for like medium to larger cities need to get their act together. I don't know. I look at what happened in Minnesota and Minneapolis. The cops they run out. Too many cops. I think the good ones have left. Now we're seeing more and more bad cops keep these jobs. And I think conservatives need to recognize, well, conservatives probably won't, but at least the more liberty-minded individuals need to recognize. Now that Democrats have put the pressure on and they've gained control in many areas, it's only going to get worse. They're not going to enforce things like, come on, man, look at the autonomous zones, the no-go zones in Seattle and Portland and in Minneapolis, where people are being shot and killed and the cops don't do anything about it. But I tell you this, there is a video of a man. I don't know who he is. I don't care for his opinions, but I can tell you he's backing away from a bunch of Antifa, and they're like coming at him, and one guy's like pointing a rod. Guess who got arrested? The guy walking backwards. The police then apologized to Antifa. So long as I see that, I say, hey, these Democrats, they're barking up the wrong tree. You know what I think will happen? Let them defund the police. Let them do it more and more and more. Crime is skyrocketing. Now we're seeing in the polling data I showed yesterday that support for Biden, support for Democrats, and support for Black Lives Matter is in the gutter. So let baby have their bottle, call their bluff. No, I'm not okay with crime. No, I'm not okay with people being attacked, assaulted, and abused. And no, I'm not okay with the cops taking people's right to defend themselves. Because if they're not going to arrest these people, but they'll arrest you, we got a problem. Anyway, rant over. Hey, how's that for an abolish the police rant? Feel free to disagree. I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world. I don't think I'm right about everything. And I think you should just tell me I'm wrong in the comments. My opinions have been swayed before, notably recently when I had the conversation with Michael Malice about the right to defend yourself. He made a great point I hadn't considered, and I should have. And I've had a lot of people, and I used to be more for gun control, and now I'm more pro 2A. If you are pro Second Amendment and you think you should have a right to defend yourself, I completely agree. And the cops are the ones who are taking it away from you. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.